Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by. Thanks for tuning in. Ham Talk Live will be on the air shortly. Please stand by.
It's Ham Radio with Neil Rapp. Here we go. Welcome to Ham Talk Live. Call in, let's talk. Neil's your guy. Ham Talk Live. Here we go on Ham Talk Radio.
Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Ham Talk Live, episode number 7. Amateur radio on the International Space Station. Recorded live on Thursday, March 31st, 2016. I'm your host, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight on the show, Rosalie White, K1STO, will be here to talk about the Amateur Radio on the International Space Station program, supported by ARRL, AMSAT, and NASA, and we'll take your calls live in just a few minutes. Last week on the big show, the guys from the National Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting and the Westchester Amateur Radio Association were here. They were talking about the museum and a special tour that's available at the museum for hams during Dayton Hamvention weekend. So if you missed that show or any future show, you can listen to the replay. That's available on hamtalklive.com, our website, or on Spreaker, TuneIn, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, or YouTube. So wherever it works best for you, you can find us there and listen in. Tonight we want to take your calls as always, so in just a few minutes be ready to call in. You can call us on Skype at the username HamTalkLive, or you can call by telephone. The number is 812 net ham 1 812 net ham 1. That's 812-638-4261. But first, we would like to take a moment to welcome a new sponsor to the show. We can't thank our sponsors enough. We're able to offset some of the cost of bringing you the show each week because of their support. And this week we have a brand new sponsor that's going to revolutionize the antenna industry. It's Sprayaway.
Hello, Willie Mays here for Sprayaway, the SWR reducer in a can. Are you annoyed by that pesky SWR that keeps getting in your antennas? Well, you can get rid of that in one easy step. Just spray some Sprayaway on your antenna and the SWR disappears like magic. Use it on all your antennas. Dipoles, verticals, and even Yagis are no match for Sprayaway. Want that tough SWR to go away? Spray it away. But wait, there's more. Order in the next 30 seconds and you can get 2 cans of Sprayaway for the price of 1. And we're not stopping there. Order now and we'll throw in a can of Zap Free. Protect your antenna from lightning. Coat it in Zap Free and your worries are gone. Spray it and forget it. Lightning strikes will never bother your rig again. Here's how to order. To order Sprayaway for just $19.99, call 985-655-2500. That's 985-655-2500. Call now, 985-655-2500.
Yeah, and just keep in mind tomorrow's April Fool's Day, by the way. Well, my guest this evening is Rosalie White, K1STO from right here in Bloomington, Indiana. Rosalie grew up in central Indiana, and her ham radio adventures took her to ARRL headquarters in Newington, Connecticut. Rosalie was on staff full-time at ARRL for 24 years, where she was the manager of field and educational services, among other duties. And in Bloomington, she worked with book writers at Author Solutions, and now manages her family's farm, mostly maintenance and finances, but still finds time to facilitate the ARISS program mostly from home, as the ARISS International Secretary and ARRL's delegate to the program. She was the 1995 winner of the Dayton Hamvention Amateur of the Year Award. She's worked on many ARRL projects, including the ARRL license manuals and public service newsletters. And she flew her own plane for many years, and I had the opportunity to present ham radio with her to a convention full of science teachers here in Indiana many years ago. So, Rosalie, welcome to Ham Talk Live.
Well, thank you, Neil. It's great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about the whole beginning of the ARISS program. How did this idea start out, and how did this get started?
Well, people may be familiar with back in the space shuttle days, SARX, and that was the predecessor, of course. And in the last few years of SARX, of course, we knew that the International Space Station was being built. And some of your listeners may recall Roy Neal, who was an NBC science desk reporter, and he was K6 Delta United Echo, and he was on our team, and he said we need to get with NASA to make sure that we're on the ISS. And so he spoke with people he knew from his science career, reporting science things such as space launches, and stirred up interest. And of course, NASA always loved SARX as what it did for how little effort it had to put into it, because it was all volunteer. And NASA came to ARRL and AMSAT and said, we need one organization that will coordinate every amateur radio activity on the ISS. And so get that going. So as early as 1996, which is our 20 years is coming up this November, I contacted the IRU societies and asked if there would be representatives for an ISS team for amateur radio. And AMSAT Frank Bauer, KA3HDO, Hotel Delta Oscar, did the same thing for AMSAT's international societies. And we had our first meeting, and voila, ARISS was born.
Well, that's great. And I remember a lot of the old SARX missions, and able to listen to the space shuttle fly over. And it was always an interesting thing growing up. And so glad you guys were able to make all that work. Now, what's the process of getting a contact with ARISS, and what's the wait time?
Okay, well, there is a proposal process. In the past, we had an application, and you basically wrote down if you were a ham radio operator working with a teacher, or if you were a teacher, you wrote down what kinds of educational activities you wanted to do. And then your school may or may not have been picked. If it was a lot of good educational activities, it would definitely be picked. Now it's a proposal process, and there are windows open twice a year, and they're open for approximately 2 months. And the proposal is a very carefully spelled out listing of things that need to be written down, and you submit the proposal. And it's kind of a two-step process where if your educational proposal is good, and if you have a chance to get a lot of kids involved, and you have publicity that you can plan, and you can get student release forms for using photos, and you have a plan to get comments from teachers and students afterwards, then you pass the first step, which is the first half of that proposal. And then once you're selected, you choose your equipment plan. If you're a school that does not know a ham radio group in your area, and ARRL and AMSAT can't find someone because they do have to be experienced with satellite communications, or be a very quick learner of how to do that and get access to equipment, then it would be a telebridge contact, which is very much like a phone patch, where let's say one of our ARISS telebridge stations in Australia has a good pass over Australia that can be relayed to a school that does not have an amateur radio setup. And so you asked about the time frame. We have a window that closes on April 15. It opened on February 15, closes on April 15. And that's for contacts that will be scheduled January 1 through June 30th of 2017. So basically, you have a year to get everything in place, and it might not take that long, but at least you don't have to run around like a Tasmanian devil getting everything ready, because you have time to get everything planned.
And there is a lot to get ready, because, you don't get a second shot at this, and
That's
you're
right.
only going to get a few minutes. And so you have a backup station that has to be in place, and some things that try to keep Murphy away.
That's right. That's right. And like you say, you get a 10-minute window, and I saw a schedule about a month ago of the astronauts' day, and it is jam-packed. And it's only going to get worse as the commercial crews are on the ISS, because, of course, with the commercial crew, they have certain research that they are being paid to do. So every little box on this huge spreadsheet is filled, and they are worked hard.
So, they get 10 minutes to go take a break and go do this. We can't mess it up. So
That's right.
so we got to make it count. So it is a fairly lengthy process, but it's been really rewarding, and the telebridge process is there too, so you can squeeze those in from time to time if the station, the Earth station idea is not there. So recently you just had a big celebration of the 1,000th QSO. Tell us about QSO number 1,000.
It was pretty exciting for us to reach that goal in 16 years' time, because we were actually the first payload on board the ISS. The first commander set up the station within hours of opening the airlock and getting inside and getting comfortable. And so we were really the first official operational payload, and that was in 2000, December. And so we were very excited to hit the 1,000th QSO. And of course, it's a worldwide team. And, with SAREX, of course, it was just the U.S., and it was a little easier to coordinate. But now with an international team, it's, different. And our 1,000th contact was one that was not only exciting for us, but it was one that was so well done by the group that applied. And their proposal was the North Dakota Space Grant Consortium, which is at University of North Dakota. And those college students and their friends and volunteers with other classes, not just the science and the aerospace classes, but throughout the college, visited 5 different elementary schools in all around Grand Forks, North Dakota. And they visited those schools 5 or 6 times to teach the kids about aerospace, about living in space, about wireless, about amateur radio. And they did all kinds of really cool things, like, of course, launching rockets, but crafting and testing parachutes similar to what is on NASA's Orion capsule. And they designed and tested neutral buoyant objects and just all kinds of neat things. And they had, the day of the contact, they had stations set up all around the gymnasium for the kids to get really involved in hands-on activities, just before the contact. And so they had students from actually kindergarten through college asking questions. It was just really exciting to see so much education going on.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a great group, and I know I've talked to the K0UND station several times, and they've created quite a presence on the air with School Club Roundup, especially is my interaction with them. And so I was glad to hear that they were able to be involved in KSTO number 1,000. That's quite a landmark, and we've got more to go.
Yes, indeed.
Well, we're going to play a little clip here from Tim Peake, KG5BVI, and if you want to watch the video of this is available on YouTube, and this was done specifically for the anniversary for the 1,000th KSTO. Is that correct?
That's correct. And of course, he's an English astronaut. He was actually the first ISS United Kingdom astronaut, and he's done a lot of school contacts for us recently, and he's just thrilled to be doing it. He loves it.
So this is available out there on YouTube, but we're going to play the audio from it. It's about 3 minutes, and it really gives you kind of a synopsis of the whole ARISS program.
K1STO, this is N2SJ, over.
NA2SJ from NA1SF for scheduled contact.
Hi everyone, I'm Tim Peake and welcome aboard the International Space Station, where we're orbiting Earth 16 times every day. One of the most rewarding activities that some astronauts undertake on orbit is to talk to schools using the space station's ham radio. Now these are events that are planned by ARISS, which is a worldwide group of amateur radio volunteers who are dedicated to introducing young people and students to science, technology, engineering and mathematics. Now this is the equipment here in the Columbus laboratory, which consists of a handheld radio, a headset, and we also have a ham video unit. Now as the International Space Station orbits above your location, a radio link is established between the ISS and your school. Now because we're travelling at nearly 18,000 miles per hour, which is an incredible 25 times the speed of sound, we usually get about 9 or 10 minutes of good radio contact before losing the signal. So about 5 minutes before the scheduled start time of the contact, I come into the Columbus laboratory and configure the radio so that I'm on the correct channel, and sometimes I'll set up the ham video too. Just before the predicted time, I'll begin to start calling the school using the standard amateur radio calling techniques. For example, if the call sign of your school was GB4 Fun, I would say Golf Bravo 4, Foxtrot Uniform November. This is Golf Bravo 1 Sierra Sierra, listening and standing by. Now at your school, the radio operator will be listening for my call, but may also transmit and try to call me as well. You'll probably have a much more powerful transmitter on the ground than we have up here on board, so I'm likely to hear you before you hear me. Then, once we can hear each other, then comes the best bit, which is actually talking to the students and answering the questions. Once I've answered all the questions, we use the remaining time to say goodbye to each other and end the connection. I'll then spend a few minutes configuring the radio back into a rebroadcast mode, and then I'll go back to my day job, which is of course doing science on board the International Space Station. ARISS is a brilliant opportunity for astronauts to talk to school pupils. It's really rewarding to hear how excited the students are when they're talking to somebody up here in space. And it's a true privilege to be able to inspire our next generation of scientists and engineers through amateur radio.
Well, it's time to take our first break, but we'll be back with more with Rosalie White, K1STO, right after this word from one of our real sponsors, Tower Electronics, right here on Ham Talk Live. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. Tower Electronics has been the Ham's dime store since 1978, bringing connectors, antennas, cables, and other parts to the world. Scott and Jill travel the country bringing their store to you at Hamfest, but you can also order online at pl-259.com or by calling 920-435-2929. 2973. Stock up on those supplies like PL259 and N connectors, audio cables, mobile antennas, and ham sticks. Their silver-plated N connectors are even in use on the International Space Station. Tower Electronics is a dealer for MFJ, Comet, Daiwa, OPEC, Workman, and Ham Pro Technologies. Tower Electronics, online at pl-259.com, proud to sponsor this episode of Ham Talk Live.
Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp.
Welcome back to Ham Talk Live. We'd like to thank Tower Electronics for sponsoring the show. Don't miss Scott and Jill at the Mobile, Alabama Ham Fest on April 9th, or you can visit their website at pl-259.com. Rosalie White, K1STO, is our guest this evening from the Amateur Radio on the International Space Station, or ARISS program, sponsored by ARRL, AMSAT, and NASA. And we're going to start taking calls now, so feel free to give us a call. The best way to do that is with Skype. Give us an audio call on Skype at Ham Talk Live. Or if Skype isn't your thing, you can call us on the telephone. That's 812-NET-HAM-1. That's 812-NET-HAM-1. And you can ask your questions of Rosalie White, K1STO. So while we're back with Rosalie here, tell us about your upcoming fundraising and a little bit about the needs for some equipment on the space station.
Okay, well, of course, we have to keep NASA and ARRL and AMSAT happy because they help us with things we need, but also the radio originally was prepared and flight certified back before 2000 because, of course, it was launched to the space station before the space station was inhabited, and it's old, and it's in a rough environment. It floats around and gets, the headset may get bumped into, the radio is Velcroed on the side. I mean, everything up there is Velcroed to the sides and the ceiling and the floor. And so it's kind of a rough environment. And the most expensive thing about it, well, there's two things that are expensive about it. One is that you have to have 7 of anything that you send to the space station, because if the one that's there, something happens to it, then you have to have a backup. But there's also one that goes through the shake and bake tests for whether it's going to survive a launch. And it also has to be tested for interference to the communication systems that are up there. And it has to be tested for outgassing. You don't want any noxious fumes if it overheats or something like that. So the cost of testing and getting it space flight certified is incredibly expensive. And back to the 7 units. There has to be one at Johnson Space Center so that if something goes wrong, it can be our ham radio operator who works there, although there's quite a few that work there, but the one who works with the ARISS program specifically would have to do troubleshooting on the ground. So he has to have a flight-like unit, and then there has to be another unit that's in Russia, because Russia also has a mission control, and so on and so forth. So it's very expensive to have any kind of equipment up there, and not only is it the radio, but the power supply, and the headsets, and the cabling, and the connectors, and it's just not your regular PL259. It's space-certified cabling and connectors. So it is very expensive, and we do appreciate some sponsors. The Yasmi Foundation has given us some money. The D710 radios are going to be given to us for use, we hope. And so we have a challenge coin which anyone, who, of course, who wants to give money to ARISS, we would love it. But if you give $100 or more, you get a special challenge coin. It's a very beautiful coin. And if you'll be going to Dayton, you'll be able to see them there.
And we do have pictures of those up on our Facebook page, and we tweeted those out earlier in the week, so you can see a picture of the challenge coin if you're interested in that.
That's great.
So if you just go to your local ham store and they've got free shipping, that doesn't help. The free shipping doesn't go to the International Space Station.
Oh, I wish. Those drones that are going to be delivering things, that would be really cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's free shipping. They didn't say that they didn't deliver to the International Space Station.
That's right. That's right.
You should,
we'll
you
look
should
into
take
that.
them up on that. Yeah. So if you'd like to, if you would like to donate to ARISS, and specifically pick up one of these challenge coins, what method is best for people to do that?
Well, I guess I should have said that, huh? Both the ARRL and AMSAT site have a place that you can, for instance, at AMSAT, there's a donate button, and ARRL's ARISS website has a donate button. And thanks to AMSAT, they do the processing. It goes directly through AMSAT, just as if you made a purchase of any other kind from AMSAT, and the money is specifically channeled to ARISS. There's a button that says ARISS, and so that's how you know it's going to come to the right spot. And I'm actually the one who will take care of making sure you get that coin. So once you donate by that button, I will be notified and it will be sent to you.
Well, that's excellent. So if you're able to donate to that, we definitely encourage you to do that. And again, you can see the picture of the coin up on Facebook or Twitter, or see that over at Dayton for yourself. So that's great, and that makes some things happen. And we were able to make this happen kind of on a last minute circumstantial kind of thing. Nick Bauer, KC9GZY, is our assistant producer, and he's actually in Washington, D.C. this evening. He's on assignment. But Nick, tell us about your opportunity to talk to the International Space Station.
Yeah, hey Neil, hey Rosalie.
Hi there.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I was in the club at Bloomington High School South, K1STO. We had an opportunity to talk with Russian space tourist, Miss Ansari, who was on the ISS, and it was an incredible experience. Members in the club, we had talked to different states, different countries, but something about space that's just different, and we didn't know if it would work. We were at the radio. Neil was there with us, and we heard her come through, and it was just a really neat experience to say that we actually were able to apply what we had learned through high school classes and through our ham club and reach the International Space Station. It's something that 10 years later is still stuck with me.
Yeah, so I edited down the about 6-minute window we actually had on this particular pass. I edited that down to 1.5 minutes and cut out some of the other calls that she made that were not there, and some of the static and the blank time. So we'll play that and let you listen to Nick actually on hand at the radio.
Procrastinate, so I don't.
Bingo.
Is that her?
I think so.
Each individual has a sleeping bag that's attached to a wall or a seat inside the bag, and you float inside the bag, or you can suck yourself down inside the bag. Over. We have special made food that's either canned or frozen. You add water to it, and it doesn't taste. It doesn't look good, but the taste is fine, and you have a nice variety. I'll be happy to if you
ARISS. This is K1STO. RX0ISS. This is Kilo 9 Sierra Oscar uniform.
So listening back at that clip, it was amazing to me how we were listening to absolute silence, and then just all of a sudden, there she is. And she's talking to another school, and she called another school. There were 3 of us that were trying it, and the second one didn't connect somehow. And then by the time they got to us, it was just enough to get our call sign out there and acknowledged, and that was it. And she's gone. I mean, it's just a very narrow window of time, and it goes from 0 to S9, and then S9 all the way down to 0 in no time.
Yeah, you can just sort of picture in your mind that it's going from the horizon to the horizon, and that's what happens.
So Nick, tell us a little more about what that means to you after that's all over.
Yeah, so at the time it was just a thrill, even though it didn't last long. It was a thrill just to experience that. And myself and some club members were interviewed by the local newspaper. They ran a story about our club and about the contact with the space station. And I mean, it's been 10 years since we had that experience, and it's still a story I share with people. And I have an enthusiasm for space and science. And I was just at the Air and Space Museum here in D.C. today, and it's just an experience that I think about. It meant a lot to me, and it's just a neat experience to talk to people about and share what amateur radio can do, because most people I mention it to don't realize that we have that capability from Bloomington, Indiana, to talk with the space station.
Yeah, I was happy that we were able to do it, she got her license right at the last second, and it was kind of like, well, hey, how would you like to try this in 2 days? And it's like, wow, okay, we'll try it, sure, why not? That's not the way that we just talked to Rosalie, about all this planning and a year, and some of them have been waiting 2 years and in the past, and planning everything and all these backups and everything. And no, we just, go.
Well, we certainly knew that
we were lucky.
We certainly knew that your school was, you had good education going on, and we knew that you had a setup, and it just fell into place.
Well, thankfully it did. And I was able to get one of our club members, AJ, to kind of help me out with some of the antenna issues and the Doppler shift that I'd never tried before. I'd never done a satellite contact before, so that was an amazing first attempt at a satellite contact, the International Space Station. So we're thankful for that.
I know that Nick is very much interested in math and also space, and of course the NASA promotes science, technology, engineering, and math, so it almost might have been something, Nick, that kept you going toward that math career.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, Nick was an outstanding student of mine, and he has a lot of talent in science and definitely math, and he's been willing to come help us on the show here too, so in the last few weeks, so we appreciate that. All right, well, we're going to come back and take some more calls and talk with Rosalie about the future of the ARISS program right after this word from the ham station here on Ham Talk Live. This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by The Ham Station. For 35 years, The Ham Station has brought new and used radios, antennas, accessories, and equipment to the amateur radio community. Give Jeff or Dan a call at 1-800-729-4373 or order online at hamstation.com. Ham Station carries all the major brands like ICOM, Yaesu, and Kenwood. Shop from a wide selection of radio scanners, MFJ accessories, Heil Sound products, Mirage and Ameritron amplifiers, Cushcraft antennas, and more. Easy online shopping and fast shipping are waiting for you at hamstation.com or call 1-800-729-4373. The Ham Station, proud to sponsor this episode of Ham Talk Live.
Oh, yeah. You're talking ham radio, baby. You're listening to Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp.
Welcome back to Ham Talk Live. Thanks to the support of the Ham Station to help bring Ham Talk Live to you each week. Dan and Jeff are just a phone call away to answer your questions about your new rig or antenna. Call 800-729-4373 or visit them online at hamstation.com. Be sure to listen every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time right here on hamtalklive.com, and check out our Facebook page and our Twitter feed. Just search for Ham Talk Live. The amateur radio on the International Space Station is our topic tonight. We have some time for a call or two more, so give us a call on Skype at Ham Talk Live or by telephone at 812-NET-HAM1. Again, Skype us on Ham Talk Live or by telephone 812-NET-HAM1 if you have a question that you would like to ask about the ARISS program, about Rosalie. Feel free to give us a call. So, Rosalie, what's in store for the future of the ARISS program now that the big anniversary number 1000 is over and the 20-year anniversary is nearing? What's the future hold for ARISS?
Well, 2000's contact or Mars. In fact, we have had some discussions about Mars capabilities and which NASA vehicles would be best for us to think about. And for instance, there's the back porch, which is a structure that looks like a deck on the back of one of the ISS modules. And we're very serious about having some equipment out on that deck. And there were a lot of benefits to not having it inside, and have the cabling, of course, inside, but for the near future, we do plan to have more slow scan television transmissions and just keep everything going as it's been going. We always hope to have an astronaut who decides that rag chewing is the greatest thing since sliced bread. They're so busy, they don't have loads of time to just rag chew, but now and again you get one who decides that it is a lot of fun. The bug bites them bad.
Yeah, that would be great if we had somebody that would do that. I think, I don't know, what comes to mind is Owen Garriott, which he's the first one that I ever heard, and I don't know, it seems like, he may have been a little bit better at that than some, but the demands of the crew, I think, have grown exponentially since that point in time.
Yes, plus Owen was a ham to begin with, and Ron Parise was, and Ken Cameron was, and, there were some that just were already quite experienced, but some of them take to it just so easily. And, of course, it doesn't take a lot for them to pass the test. They're all very smart people, quick, broad background. A lot of it, they already know the answers to the tests. And if they don't know a lot about electronics, maybe they're more in the medical field or something like that, it doesn't take them very long to learn. And like Sunita Williams, she really enjoyed talking. And Owen Garriott's son, Richard, was not a ham to begin with, but once they were up there and saw how much fun it was, they talked about things like how amazing it is to come up to the coast of some continent, and as you were over the ocean, it was just deathly silent, black, no lights, and all of a sudden there was a clamoring of people wanting to talk to them, and how cool that was.
Well, I cannot imagine going up there. That's just beyond anything I can fathom. We've got time for one more call. 812-NET-HAM1. Give us a call. I'll leave one last question here. Out of all the 1,000 contacts, which one, if you had to pick one that was the most memorable, which one would that be for you?
Well, that's so difficult because everyone I've ever heard, it makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. It's the anticipation, just like you said, there's silence. And then you think you hear some static, or maybe it's your imagination. And then you do hear the static, and then you start worrying, is this all I'm going to get is static? And then a voice, a syllable comes out, and then all of a sudden you hear the call sign. And every time you hear about the students afterwards and the team, the many, many people on our team who do so much, and they say the same thing. It's a thrill for them to be able to facilitate the general public learning about space, learning about some sort of science, learning about radio. It's just so exciting. I mean, I've heard so many teachers, and there's some really good YouTubes out there of students saying what they learned and how you can just, in the excitement. I saw a photo of a teacher at a recent contact, and you know how when you're really surprised and you put your hand over your mouth and it's like you're going, oh my. Well, she was doing that. She was just so thrilled when it happened. And it's just, the whole thing is a thrill. But I guess I would have to say that Sunita Williams and Doug Wheelock and Mike Finke and Richard Garriott, some of their contacts were my most memorable because they were just so personable, and you could tell they loved it. The emotion came through.
Well, that's great. And that's exactly what we thought too, was, okay, is that all I'm going to get is this little static burst? And it's this roller coaster. You're like, wow, is that it? And then all of a sudden it works. And,
yes.
And
yes.
It's just fabulous. Well, that's a wrap for this week's edition of Ham Talk Live. Thank you so much, Rosalie, for coming on. My guest tonight has been Rosalie White, K1STO. And thanks to the callers and listeners out there in cyberspace. And I'll invite you all back next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, when my guest will be Craig Thompson, K9CT, who is recently back from his de-expedition to Palmyra. So be sure to call in and ask questions about his trip. And for a list of all of our upcoming guests, be sure to visit hamtalklive.com. So for now, with Rosalie White, K1STO, Andy Morrison, K9AWM on fake commercial duty, and assistant producer Nick Bauer, KC9GZY on assignment in Washington, this is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, saying 7375, and may the good DX be yours.